They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but in New York City's high society, it's best served with a side of paparazzi and $1 billion smile. When Julian Sterling, the tech mogul of the decade, sat his devoted wife down on their 5th anniversary and asked for an open marriage, he thought he'd won the lottery. He thought he could keep his mistress and his perfect public image. But he forgot one thing. His wife, Serafina, didn't just have a good lawyer. She had a past, and less than 24 hours later, the tabloids weren't talking about Julian's affair. They were screaming about Serafina's new boyfriend, Dante Moretti, the most dangerous man on the East Coast. Buckle up. This isn't a fairy tale, it's a war. The air inside Le Coucou on Lafayette Street smelled of brown butter, expensive perfume, and impending disaster. Serafina Hart Sterling adjusted the strap of her emerald green dress, her fingers brushing against the cold platinum of her wedding ring. Across the table, Julian Sterling was swirling a glass of 1982 Chateau Margaux, like he was swirling the entire world in his palm. He was handsome in that sharp, curated way that graced the cover of Forbes and GQ, blonde hair perfectly coiffed, a jawline that could cut glass, and eyes that always seemed to be looking past you for a better opportunity. "Happy anniversary, Sarah," Julian said, his voice smooth, practicing the charm that had secured Sterling Tech a $40 billion evaluation last quarter. 5 years? Serafina smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. She had felt the shift in the air for months, the late nights at the office in Hudson Yards, the smell of Baccarat Rouge 540 on his shirts, a perfume she never wore. It feels like a lifetime. It does, Julian nodded, setting the glass down. He leaned forward, clasping his hands. This was his pitch stance. Serafina stiffened. He wasn't looking at her like a wife. He was looking at her like a shareholder he needed to convince. "Sarah, you know I love you. We've built an empire together. The charity galas, the image. We are the American dream." "But," she prompted, her heart hammering a slow, heavy rhythm against her ribs. "But monotony is the death of innovation. In business and in love." Julian exhaled, feigning vulnerability. "I've been doing a lot of reading, talking to my life coach. We're young, we're powerful. Why should we limit ourselves to the archaic structures of the past? I think we should open the marriage." The restaurant went silent for her. The clinking of silverware, the murmur of the couple at the next table discussing a Hamptons rental, it all faded into a high-pitched ring. "Open the marriage," she repeated, her voice deadpan. "It's just physical, Sarah." Julian rushed to clarify, reaching for her hand, but she pulled it back to pick up her water glass. "Emotionally, I am yours. But I have needs. We have needs. I want us to be free. I don't want to hide things from you. I want to be honest. Honest." The word tasted like ash. She knew exactly who he wanted to be honest with, his 24-year-old CFO, Jessica Thorne. The press had been sniffing around it for weeks, but Serafina had killed the stories with a few well-placed calls to her publicist. She had protected him. And this was his thanks. He didn't want freedom. He wanted permission. He wanted to parade his mistress around Manhattan without the guilt, keeping Serafina as the trophy wife to maintain his stock prices. Serafina looked at him. Really looked at him. She saw the arrogance, the smug certainty that she would agree because she was Serafina the good, the orphan socialite who needed him to feel secure. She took a sip of water. The cold liquid grounded her. "So," she said, her voice terrifyingly calm, "you want to sleep with other people, and you want me to be okay with it." "I want us to explore," Julian corrected, smiling that winning smile, And hey, it goes both ways. If you want to go out and find some distraction, I support that. I trust you." He trusted her because he thought she was boring. He thought her world ended at charity auctions and Pilates classes. "Okay," Serafina said. Julian blinked. "Okay? You agree? You made a compelling business case, Julian. Innovation, freedom." She stood up, smoothing her dress. She picked up her clutch, a limited edition Hermes that cost more than his mistress's apartment. "I accept the terms." "Sarah, wait. We haven't ordered dessert. Where are you going?" "To explore," she said coldly. "Happy anniversary, Julian. Don't wait up." She walked out of the restaurant, head held high, ignoring the heads that turned to watch the famous Mrs. Sterling leave alone. She stepped out onto the cool pavement of Lafayette Street, the New York night buzzing with energy. She pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking now, not from sadness, but from a rage so pure it felt like jet fuel. She scrolled past her contacts, past the lawyers, past the PR agents, past the friends who were really just spies for her husband. She stopped at a number she hadn't dialed in 7 years. It was saved simply as D. She pressed call. It rang once, twice. "Speak," a voice answered. It was deep, rasping, like gravel grinding over velvet. "It's Serafina," she said. There was a heavy silence on the other end. "I know who it is." "Why are you calling me on this line, Serafina? This line is for emergencies and body disposal." "I need to cash in the chip, Dante." A pause. "You're married to the golden boy now. You're clean. We agreed you stay clean." "The golden boy just asked for an open marriage," she said, her voice cracking slightly before hardening into steel. "He thinks I'm a distinctive accessory he can put on a shelf while he plays with his new toys. I want to burn his ego to the ground, Dante, and I need a match." "And let me guess," the voice chuckled, a dark, dangerous sound. "I'm the gasoline? Pick me up. I'm at Lafayette and Howard." "Don't move." The line went dead. Serafina looked at her reflection in the darkened window of a boutique. The sad wife was gone. The woman looking back was the daughter of the man who used to run Brooklyn before the gentrification. Julian thought he had married a socialite. He forgot he had married a Valenti. 20 minutes later, a matte black Maybach pulled up to the curb. There were no plates on the front. The back window rolled down, revealing an interior that looked more like the cockpit of a stealth bomber than a car. The door clicked open. Serafina slid inside. The smell hit her instantly. Leather, cigar smoke, and danger. Dante Moretti sat in the shadows of the back seat. He hadn't changed much in 7 years, except the scars were different. He was wearing a bespoke suit, Italian cut, sharper than a razor blade. His dark hair was slicked back, revealing a face that was too harsh to be beautiful, but too magnetic to look away from. He was the consultant legitimate businesses called when the law failed. In the underworld, he was simply Il Fantasma, the ghost. "You look expensive, Sarah," Dante said, his dark eyes scanning her. He didn't smile. Dante never smiled unless someone was bleeding. "I am expensive," she retorted, settling into the seat. "Drive." The driver, a massive wall of muscle named Rocco, who Serafina remembered from her childhood, nodded at her in the rearview mirror and merged seamlessly into traffic. "So," Dante said, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter built into the armrest. "Julian Sterling, the man who promised to give you the world, provided it was eco-friendly and tax-deductible. He got bored?" "He got arrogant," Serafina corrected, taking the glass. She downed the whiskey in one burn. "He wants an open marriage. He thinks I'll sit at home weeping into my silk pillows while he's out with his secretary." "And you want me to kill him?" Dante asked casually, as if asking if she wanted the AC turned up. Because the rate for high-profile CEOs has gone up. Inflation. No. Killing him makes him a martyr. Sterling Tech stock would skyrocket out of sympathy. I don't want him dead, Dante. I want him humiliated. I want him to regret the day he learned the word open. Dante turned fully toward her, his interest piqued. The streetlights of passing avenues slashed across his face. Go on. He said the open marriage goes both ways. He dared me to find a distraction. Serafina met his gaze, her blue eyes icy. I want to date you, Dante. Dante laughed. It was a genuine, surprised bark of laughter. Me? Serafina, look at me. I'm the guy the FBI has a dedicated task force for. I'm the guy mothers warn their daughters about. Julian is the cover of Time magazine. I'm the redacted file in the basement of the CIA. Exactly, she hissed. You are his nightmare. You are raw, dangerous, and terrifyingly masculine. Julian is soft hands and boardroom politics. If the world sees me with you, it screams that Julian wasn't man enough to keep me. It destroys his perfect life narrative. It makes him look weak. Dante swirled his drink, thinking, you want to use me as a prop. I want to use you as a weapon. And in exchange? Dante's voice dropped an octave. The air in the car grew heavy. I know about the Port Authority deal, she whispered. I know your family is trying to legitimize the shipping routes, but the city council is blocking the zoning permits for your warehouses in Red Hook. Dante went still. How do you know that? I'm the wife of a billionaire tech mogul. I hear things at dinners that people think I'm too stupid to understand. Julian has the zoning commissioner in his pocket. If you help me destroy Julian, I will get you those permits. I have the files on the commissioner's offshore accounts. Julian keeps them as leverage. I know where they are. Dante stared at her for a long moment. Then, a slow, predatory grin spread across his face. You're not the little girl I used to chase around the mulberry trees anymore, are you, Piccola? The little girl grew up. Are you in? Dante tapped the glass partition. Rocco, change of plans. We're not going to the safe house. Where to, boss? Go to the Box, Dante said, naming the most exclusive, debauched nightclub in Manhattan. And call the paparazzi. Tell them Serafina Sterling is stepping out. He looked back at her. If we're going to do this, we do it loud. By tomorrow morning, Julian won't just be a cuckold. He'll be a laughing stock. The next morning, the sun rose over Central Park, but Julian Sterling didn't see it. He was in his penthouse, staring at his iPad, his face draining of color. His phone had been ringing since 6 a.m. His PR team, his investors, his mother. On the screen was a photo from TMZ. The headline was in bold, screaming red letters. Mrs. Sterling's revenge. Tech wife spotted locking lips with mob boss Dante Moretti at the Box. The photo was grainy, but undeniable. It showed Serafina, looking more radiant and dangerous than she had ever looked on a red carpet, pressed against a wall by a man in a dark suit. His hand was tangled in her hair. Her hands were gripping his lapels. It was passionate, raw, and utterly scandalous. Julian felt bile rise in his throat. He had told her to find a distraction. He expected a yoga instructor, maybe a tennis pro. Instead, she had gone out and found the devil himself. His phone buzzed again. A text from Serafina. You want it open? I blew the doors off. Julian threw the iPad across the room. It shattered against the marble fireplace. The war had begun. The boardroom of Sterling Tech was soundproof, which was fortunate because Julian Sterling was screaming loud enough to shatter the floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the Hudson River. How did this happen? Julian roared, slamming a stack of newspapers onto the mahogany table. I pay you people $3 million a year for crisis management. This isn't a crisis. This is a nuclear winter." Around the table, 6 high-powered publicists and lawyers sat in terrified silence. On every front page, the Post, the Daily News, even the Wall Street Journal's lifestyle section, was the image of his wife in the arms of Dante Moretti. "It's trending, sir," the youngest PR aide squeaked, looking at her phone. "Team Serafina is the #1 hashtag globally. People are calling her the Mafia Queen of Manhattan." "She's not a Mafia Queen," Julian spat, loosening his tie. He looked haggard. He hadn't slept. "She's a Pilates instructor with a degree in art history. She doesn't know these people. She's trying to make me jealous. It's a bluff." Mr. Sterling, his chief legal counsel, a grey-haired man named Arthur Pendergast, cleared his throat. "Dante Moretti doesn't bluff. He is currently under investigation by the RICO squad for controlling the cement unions in Jersey and the port imports in Red Hook. He is legitimate adjacent. If Serafina is with him, she is in physical danger. Or worse for us, she is leveraging his influence." "She's my wife," Julian hissed. "I own her. I made her." "Technically, sir," Pendergast noted dryly, "you asked for an open marriage. Legally, she hasn't violated any terms of your verbal contract. In fact, she's adhering to them with spectacular efficiency." Julian grabbed his jacket. "I'm going to get her." "Sir, Mr. Moretti is not someone you just walk up to. I am Julian Sterling. I built the infrastructure this city runs on. A thug in a suit doesn't scare me." Across town, in the penthouse of the Obsidian Tower, a building that didn't appear on most tourist maps, Serafina was sipping an espresso that cost more than her first car. She was wearing one of Dante's dress shirts, the sleeves rolled up to her elbows. The apartment was stark, brutalist, and masculine. Concrete walls, black leather furniture, and a view of the city that made New York look like a chessboard. Dante walked in from the balcony. He was shirtless, a towel draped around his neck, sweat glistening on his torso. A tattoo of a fallen angel covered his back, the ink dark and intricate. He had been sparring. "Your husband is in the lobby," Dante said calmly, picking up an apple and taking a bite. "He's yelling at my doorman. He's threatening to buy the building and evict everyone." Serafina felt a jolt of panic, the old reflex of the good wife kicking in. "I should go down there. I don't want a scene." "Sit down," Dante commanded. It wasn't a shout. It was a low rumble that vibrated in her chest. "Dante, he is nothing. You are in my house now, Piccola. In my world, we don't run to the lobby for screaming exes. We let them come up, so we can throw them off the balcony." He smirked. "Metaphorically, unless you give the thumbs down." "Let him up," Serafina said, steeling herself. She tightened the sash of the silk robe she wore over the shirt. "I need to look him in the eye." Dante nodded to Rocco, who was standing by the elevator. Rocco pressed a button. A minute later, the private elevator doors slid open. Julian stormed in, red-faced, his designer suit rumpled. He looked like a man unraveling. "Serafina, what the hell is this?" Julian marched toward her, ignoring Dante completely. "Pack your things. We are leaving. The car is downstairs. I have a statement drafted for you to sign saying you were coerced." "Hello, Julian," Serafina said, not moving from her stool at the kitchen island. She took a slow sip of coffee. "You look tired." "Tired? I am being crucified by the media. Do you have any idea what this is doing to the stock price? To Jessica?" The name hung in the air like a foul smell. "Ah," Serafina smiled coldly. "Jessica, is she finding the open marriage less fun now that she's not the only one playing?" "This isn't a game, Sarah. You are with a criminal." Julian pointed a shaking finger at Dante, who was leaning against the wall, peeling the apple with a knife that looked far too sharp for fruit. "Do you know who this man is? He's a murderer." Dante pushed off the wall. He moved with the deceptive slowness of a large cat. He didn't walk. He stalked. He stopped inches from Julian. Julian was tall, 6'1", but Dante loomed over him, emitting an aura of violence that made the air temperature drop. "Careful, Sterling," Dante whispered. "In my house we don't use the M word. It's bad for the feng shui." "I'm not afraid of you," Julian lied, though he took a half step back. "I can buy and sell you 10 times over." Dante laughed softly. "Money is nice, Julian. I like money. But money can't stop a bullet. Money can't stop your brakes from failing on the FDR drive. Money is a tool. Power is a state of being. You have money. I have power." Dante reached out and adjusted Julian's tie, patting his chest. "Now, speak respectfully to the lady. She is under my protection." Julian swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. He looked at Serafina, his eyes pleading. "Sarah, please, stop this madness. Come home. We can close the marriage. I'll fire Jessica. I'll buy you that villa in Como." Serafina looked at the man she had devoted 5 years to. She saw the desperation. It wasn't love. It was a loss of control. He didn't want her. He wanted his possession back. "I'm not coming home, Julian," she said softly. "You want it open? We're open. In fact, I'm busy tonight. Dante is taking me to the Vanderbilt Gala." Julian's face went white. "The Vanderbilt Gala? That's my world. You can't bring him there. The mayor will be there. The board of directors." "Then I guess you better bring your A-game," Serafina said. "Now get out, before Dante decides to show you the view from the balcony." Julian glared at them, hatred burning in his eyes. "You'll regret this, Serafina. You're playing with fire." "Better than freezing to death in your shadow," she replied. Julian spun on his heel and stormed into the elevator. As the doors closed, Serafina let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Her knees felt weak. Dante was there instantly, his hand steadying her arm. His touch was warm, solid. "You did good," he murmured. "He's going to come after me," she whispered. "Legally. Financially." "Let him try," Dante said, lifting her chin so she had to look into his dark, abyss-like eyes. "He's fighting a war with spread sheets. I fight with fire. Now, you said we're going to the Vanderbilt Gala?" "I did." "Then we better go shopping." Dante grinned, a wicked, boyish expression that transformed his face. "If we're going to crash high society, I need to look less like a felon and more like a wealthy felon." The Vanderbilt Charity Gala was the apex of the New York social calendar. Held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, it was a sea of black ties, multi-million-dollar jewelry, and fake smiles. Julian Sterling arrived in his Rolls-Royce Phantom. He stepped out, flashing his practiced media smile, offering his hand to Jessica. Jessica Thorne was beautiful, undeniably. She was 24, blonde, and wore a silver dress that left little to the imagination. But she looked nervous. The cameras flashed blindingly, but the questions weren't about Julian's tech innovations. "Julian, is it true Serafina is dating the head of the Moretti crime family? Jessica, are you the reason for the split? Julian, comment on the stock drop." Julian hustled Jessica up the red carpet steps, his jaw clenched so tight his teeth hurt. "Keep walking," he muttered to her. "Don't look at them. Smile." Inside, the great hall was transformed into a wonderland of white roses and champagne towers. Julian began to work the room, desperate to salvage his reputation. He shook hands with senators, laughed too loudly at jokes made by banking CEOs. He was trying to project stability. Then, the room went quiet. It started at the entrance, a hush that rippled through the crowd like a wave. The orchestra even faltered for a beat. Julian turned. At the top of the grand staircase stood Serafina and Dante. If Julian and Jessica were polished silver, Serafina and Dante were black diamonds. Serafina wore a dress of midnight blue velvet, backless, that clung to her curves like a second skin. It was modest in the front, but devastatingly sexy in its silhouette. Around her neck was a necklace of sapphires and diamonds that looked suspiciously like a piece from the Romanov collection, something not even Julian could afford. But it was Dante who stole the air from the room. He wore a bespoke Tom Ford tuxedo, midnight blue to match Serafina, but he didn't wear a bow tie. He wore the shirt open at the collar, exposing the tan skin of his throat. He looked dangerous, predatory, and utterly magnificent among the soft, powdered men of the Upper East Side. He held Serafina's hand, not possessively, but protectively. They descended the stairs, and the crowd parted for them like the Red Sea. "My God," a senator's wife whispered near Julian. "Look at them. He looks like he's going to kill someone or seduce everyone." Another woman giggled nervously. Julian felt a vein throb in his temple. He marched over, abandoning Jessica by the shrimp cocktail. "You actually came," Julian said, stepping into their path. "You have some nerve." "Good evening, Julian," Serafina said, her voice cool and melodious. "You remember Dante?" "Mr. Sterling," Dante nodded. He held a glass of whiskey, looking bored. "Nice party. A little stiff. Needs a DJ." "You don't belong here, Moretti," Julian sneered, keeping his voice low. "Security is watching you." "Security works for a private firm called Iron Shield," Dante said casually, taking a sip of his drink. "I own Iron Shield through a shell company in the Caymans. Technically, the security is watching you to make sure you don't annoy me." Julian choked on his rage. He looked at Serafina. "Is this what you want, Sarah? To be a gangster's mole? Look at these people staring at you. They're laughing at you." "They're not laughing, Julian," Serafina said, glancing around. "They're terrified, and they're intrigued. For 5 years I was invisible next to you. I was just Julian Sterling's wife. Tonight, I'm Serafina Hart, and I'm the most interesting person in the room." "May I have this dance?" Dante asked Serafina, ignoring Julian entirely. "You may," she smiled. Dante swept her onto the dance floor. The orchestra, sensing the shift in power, began to play a waltz. Dante moved with surprising grace. "I didn't know you could waltz," Serafina whispered, her hand on his shoulder. "My mother insisted," Dante murmured, pulling her close. She said, "Dante, if you're going to break legs, you must also know how to sweep a woman off hers. Balance. Everyone is watching. Let them watch. Let them see what a real man looks like with you. Julian treats you like an asset. I treat you like a queen." As they spun, Serafina felt a rush of adrenaline she had never felt with Julian. With Julian, life was calculated. With Dante, it was a free fall. Back on the sidelines, Jessica tugged on Julian's sleeve. "Julian, everyone is looking at them. We look like idiots standing here. Let's go." "No," Julian snapped, pulling his arm away. "I am not leaving my own turf. Watch this." Julian grabbed 2 glasses of champagne and strode onto the dance floor, breaking protocol. He tapped Dante on the shoulder. "Cutting in," Julian said loudly, feigning a playful tone, but his eyes were deadly. The music didn't stop, but the nearby dancers slowed down. Dante stopped moving. He looked at Julian's hand on his shoulder. Then he looked at Julian's face. "Bad idea," Dante said softly. "It's my wife," Julian said through gritted teeth. "I have a right." "You relinquished that right at Le Cuckoo," Dante said. "Sarah," Julian pleaded, switching tactics. "One dance, for old times' sake, to show the press we're civil." Serafina looked at Dante. Dante gave a slight nod, releasing her waist. "I'll be at the bar. Don't take too long, Julian. I get jealous." Dante walked away, and the absence of his heat made Serafina shiver. Julian grabbed her waist, pulling her too tight. "Stop this charade," Julian hissed as they began to move stiffly. "You've made your point. You won. I'm jealous, okay? Is that what you wanted to hear? I'm jealous as hell. Now get rid of him." "It's not a charade, Julian," Serafina said, looking over his shoulder at Dante, who was now charming a group of debutantes at the bar. "I like him. He listens to me. He doesn't look at his phone when I talk. He doesn't ask me to optimize my schedule. He's a thug. He's loyal," Serafina snapped, pushing him back. The music stopped. They were standing in the center of the floor. "He knows who I am. You never did. You just liked the idea of me." "I made you," Julian shouted. The room went dead silent. The echo rang off the vaulted ceilings. Serafina stepped back, her eyes wide. The mask had slipped. Julian Sterling, the progressive genius, had just claimed ownership of a woman in front of New York's elite. "You didn't make me," Serafina said, her voice ringing clear in the silence. "You married me because my family name gave you old money credibility. But you forgot where I come from, Julian. I'm a heart. We survive." She turned to walk away, but Julian grabbed her wrist, hard. "You're not walking away from me." Suddenly, a hand clamped over Julian's wrist. It was a large hand, scarred and heavy with gold rings. Dante was there. He didn't look amused anymore. "Let go," Dante said. His voice was a low growl that carried across the room. "Stay out of this, Moretti," Julian warned, trying to pull his hand back, but Dante's grip was like a vice. "She asked you to let go," Dante said. "Strike one." "Security!" Julian yelled. Two burly guards in suits stepped forward from the shadows. They looked at Julian, then they looked at Dante. Dante gave them a barely perceptible nod. The guards stopped, folded their arms and looked away. Julian looked around, panic setting in. "What is this?" "I told you," Dante whispered, leaning into Julian's ear. "I own the security, and right now, the only thing keeping your wrist from snapping is the fact that Serafina is wearing a vintage dress, and I don't want your blood to stain it." Dante released Julian's wrist with a shove. Julian stumbled back, colliding with a waiter carrying a tray of champagne flutes. The crash of breaking glass was the only sound in the room. Julian lay on the floor, wet with champagne, humiliated, looking up at Dante and Serafina. Dante offered his arm to Serafina. "Ready to go, Cara? I think the mood here has spoiled." "Yes," Serafina said, looking down at her husband one last time. "I think it has." They walked out together, the cameras flashing wildly, leaving Julian Sterling sitting in a puddle of expensive alcohol and broken glass, while the city of New York watched his empire begin to crack. But as they stepped into the cool night air, Serafina noticed something. A black van was parked across the street. The window was cracked open, and the barrel of a long-range lens, or perhaps something worse, was pointed right at them. "Dante," she whispered. "I see it," he said, his body tense. "Keep smiling. Get in the car." The war wasn't over. Julian was humiliated, and a humiliated man with billions of dollars was dangerous. But he wasn't the only one watching. The underworld had noticed Dante's new obsession, and not everyone was happy about the ghost having a weakness. The hangover from the Vanderbilt Gala wasn't physical. It was financial. 2 days after the incident at the museum, Serafina stood at the counter of Sant Ambreas on Madison Avenue, trying to pay for a latte and a biscotti. She tapped her Platinum American Express card. Declined. She frowned, apologetic to the barista who knew her by name. "Sorry," Try the black card." She pulled out the heavy titanium Centurion card, the one linked to the primary sterling trust. Declined. "Please contact issuer." A cold knot formed in her stomach. She checked her phone. Her banking app wouldn't log in. Her investment portfolio locked. She stepped out onto the street, the humiliating pity of the barista burning her back, and dialed Julian. He answered on the first ring. "Having trouble buying your morning treat, Sarah." "You froze my accounts," she said, her voice trembling with fury. "That is my money too, Julian. I signed the prenup, but the joint accounts are—" "The joint accounts are for the maintenance of the marriage," Julian interrupted, his voice sounding tinny and smug. "Since you have decided to step outside the marriage in such a public, vulgar display, I have petitioned the court for an emergency injunction to protect the assets from criminal influence. Judge Holloway signed it this morning." "You bribed Holloway," she accused. "I contributed to his re-election campaign," Julian corrected. "Semantics. Here's the deal, Sarah. You come home, you issue a public apology stating you were suffering from a mental break, and you testify against Dante Moretti. If you do that, the cards turn back on. If not, you don't have a dime. Let's see how long the Mafia boss keeps you around when you're a liability instead of a trophy." "You think he's with me for my money?" Serafina laughed, a harsh sound. "Julian, he has more cash in his sofa cushions than you have in your liquid assets. He's a thug. Once the novelty wears off, he'll toss you aside. I'm giving you a lifeline. Take it. I'd rather starve." She hung up, but the fear was real. She had walked out of her life with a clutch and the clothes on her back. She was entirely dependent on Dante. For a woman who prided herself on independence, it was a terrifying position. She walked 4 blocks to where Rocco was waiting in the SUV. She climbed in, her face pale. "Take me to him," she said. Rocco didn't ask questions. He drove her not to the penthouse, but to a nondescript warehouse in the meatpacking district. The sign outside said, "Moretti Imports and Exports." Inside, the air smelled of sawdust and coffee. Men were moving crates with efficient silence. They stopped and nodded respectfully as Serafina walked through. She found Dante in a glass-walled office overlooking the floor. He was in his shirt sleeves, reviewing a ledger, a cigarette burning in an ashtray. He looked up, seeing her distress immediately. He stood up, rounding the desk. "What did he do?" "He froze everything," Serafina said, dropping her purse on the desk. "I can't buy a coffee. I can't call a cab. I am destitute." Dante looked at her. Then he did something unexpected. He pulled a heavy iron key from his pocket and unlocked the bottom drawer of his desk. He pulled out a stack of cash, $100 bills, bound in rubber bands. It must have been $50,000. He tossed it on the desk. Then he pulled out a black debit card. "The code is 1024, he said. "It's an offshore account in the Caymans. It has no limit." "Dante, I can't—" "I'm not giving you an allowance, Serafina," he said sternly. "I'm arming you. Julian is fighting with economic sanctions, so we fight back." He walked over to a safe in the corner, spun the dial, and opened it. He pulled out a thick file folder. "You said you knew about the commissioner's offshore accounts," Dante said. "You said you wanted to trade that info for the destruction of Julian's ego." "Yes." "Plans have changed," Dante said, tossing the file onto the desk next to the money. "We aren't just going for his ego anymore. Julian reached out to the Russo family this morning." Serafina froze. "The Russos? The ones who run the concrete racket?" "The ones who want me dead," Dante clarified. "Julian is desperate. He thinks he can hire them to scare me away. He doesn't realize that by inviting the Russos into his bed, he's signed a death warrant. Not for me, For himself. Dante leaned in, his hands on her shoulders. The Russos don't do scare tactics. They do kidnappings. They do leverage. Julian just painted a target on your back to get to me. He thinks he's playing chess, but he just handed a grenade to a monkey. What do we do? Serafina asked, her fear transforming into cold resolve. We go to the Hamptons, Dante said. Julian is hosting his annual Summer White party at your estate in Sag Harbor tomorrow. He thinks you'll come crawling back before then. And instead? Instead, Dante smiled, a wolfish, terrifying grin. We are going to walk in there and seize the property. And we're going to let the Russos know that if they touch a hair on your head, I will burn Brooklyn to the ground. The Sterling estate in Sag Harbor was a masterpiece of modern architecture. Glass, white stone, and infinity pools overlooking the bay. The Summer White party was in full swing. 300 guests, all dressed in white linen and silk, mingled on the lawn. But the mood was tense. The rumors about Serafina and the Mafia Don were the only topic of conversation. Julian stood on the terrace, wearing a white Tom Ford suit, looking manic. He kept checking his watch. He had paid Vinnie Russo $500,000 to extract Serafina and bring her here, to the house, where Julian could play the hero and save her from the life of crime. Relax, sweetie, Jessica Thorne whispered, handing him a drink. She was wearing a white bikini top and a sarong, looking out of place among the old money matrons. She'll be back. She has no money. It's not about the money anymore, Julian muttered. It's about winning. Suddenly the music cut out. At the end of the long driveway, the iron gates, which had been locked, began to groan. They were being forced open. Not by a car, by a truck. A massive, black armored truck with a ram bar smashed through the delicate iron filigree of the gates, sending twisted metal flying into the hydrangeas. The guests screamed, dropping their champagne flutes. The truck roared up the driveway, followed by a convoy of 4 black SUVs. They screeched to a halt on the pristine lawn, tearing up the grass. The doors opened. 20 men poured out. They weren't wearing white. They were wearing black tactical gear. They didn't have weapons drawn, but the threat was implicit in their posture. Then, from the lead SUV, Dante stepped out. He was wearing a black suit, a stark contrast to the sea of white. He walked around the car and opened the passenger door. Serafina stepped out. She was wearing a blood-red dress. The visual impact was violent. In a world of white submission, she was a drop of blood. Julian ran down the terrace steps, his face purple. "What is this? This is private property. I'll call the police." "Call them," Dante challenged, his voice booming across the lawn. "Call Commissioner O'Malley. Ask him if he wants to talk about the account in the Cayman Islands, the one named Project Bluebird." Julian froze. That was the leverage. Serafina walked up to Julian. The guests parted, terrified but unable to look away. This was better than any Broadway show. "You froze my accounts, Julian," Serafina said, her voice calm. "So I'm liquidating my assets, starting with this house." "You can't sell this house. It's in the trust." "Actually," a new voice spoke up. Arthur Pendergast, the company lawyer, stepped out of one of Dante's SUVs. He looked sheepish. "Arthur," Julian gasped, "what are you doing with them?" "Mr. Moretti made a very compelling argument regarding my pension fund," Pendergast stammered. And he pointed out a clause in the deed. The Sag Harbor estate was a wedding gift from Serafina's father. It was never transferred to the Sterling Trust. It belongs solely to Mrs. Sterling. Serafina smiled. "Get off my lawn, Julian." You bitch!" Julian lunged at her. It happened in a blur. Dante intercepted Julian, grabbing him by the throat and lifting him off his feet. He slammed Julian onto the hood of a white Porsche parked nearby. "Don't!" Dante growled. But before Dante could finish, a gunshot rang out. Crack! The side mirror of the Porsche shattered, inches from Dante's hip. The crowd screamed and dove for the ground. At the edge of the property, from the wooded line, 5 men emerged. They were rough-looking, wearing leather jackets despite the heat. "Let him go, Moretti!" the leader shouted. It was Vinnie Russo, a man with a nose that had been broken 3 times. He was holding a sawed-off shotgun. Julian, still pinned on the car, started laughing hysterically. I told you I had friends." Dante didn't flinch. He didn't even look at the gunman. He looked at Serafina. "Get behind the truck." "No," Serafina said. She reached into her purse. She didn't pull out a gun. She pulled out a tablet. "Vinnie Russo," she shouted, her voice projecting with the authority she had learned from her father. "If you pull that trigger, the FBI gets an email." Vinnie hesitated. "What?" "I have the shipping manifests for the Red Hook cement pour," she yelled. "I know about the bodies in the foundation of the new stadium. Julian kept the files to blackmail you. He was going to sell you out the moment you did his dirty work." Vinnie's eyes darted to Julian. "What's she talking about, Sterling?" "She's lying," Julian shrieked. "Shoot him." "Show him, Sarah," Dante said softly. Serafina tapped the screen and held it up. It was a picture of a document, a signed agreement between Julian Sterling and the district attorney, offering testimony against the Russo family in exchange for tax breaks. Julian had been playing both sides. Vinnie Russo looked at the image on the tablet, then at Julian. The barrel of the shotgun lowered, then swung to the left, toward Julian. "You rat!" Vinnie spat. "Vinnie, wait, I can explain," Julian stammered. "Gentlemen," Dante spoke up, his voice commanding the chaos. "This is a private dispute, but if you shoot Mr. Sterling here, the police will swarm this place in 3 minutes. You don't want that. I don't want that." Dante straightened his jacket. "Take Mr. Sterling. Take him somewhere quiet. Discuss your business disagreements. But leave the lady and the house out of it." Vinnie looked at Dante, a mutual understanding passing between 2 predators. "He owes us money, Moretti." "Collect it," Dante said. Vinnie nodded. He gestured to his men. 2 of them grabbed Julian, dragging him away from the Porsche. "No, Serafina, help me!" Julian screamed as they dragged him towards the woods. "Jessica!" Jessica Thorne was already running toward her convertible, keys in hand, not looking back once. Serafina watched her husband being dragged away by the consequences of his own arrogance. She felt a strange hollowness. Not sadness, but the finality of a chapter closing. Dante walked over to her. He stood in front of her, shielding her from the view of the guests, who were slowly standing up, dusting off their white linens, whispering frantically. "Is it over?" Serafina asked. "The war with Julian is over," Dante said, wiping a speck of dust from her cheek. "But you just publicly humiliated the Russo family and threatened them with FBI evidence. You just became a player, Serafina." "I was tired of being a spectator," she said. Dante smiled, and for the first time, it reached his eyes. "Good. Because I have a feeling the Russos aren't going to let this slide. And we have a house to redecorate. I hate white." He turned to the crowd of stunned socialites. "Party's over," Dante bellowed. "Get out. Unless you want to help clean up the gate." As the guests scrambled for their cars, fleeing the scandal of the decade, Serafina took Dante's hand. The sun was setting over the bay, turning the water blood red. She had lost her reputation. She had lost her perfect marriage. But as she looked at the man who stood beside her, a man who would burn the world to keep her warm, she realized she had finally found herself. But the silence of the evening was broken by the sound of sirens in the distance. Not police. Fire trucks. Smoke was rising from the direction where the Russos had taken Julian. "Dante," Serafina pointed. "Looks like Vinny has a temper," Dante noted dryly. "We should probably leave before the cops start asking why your ex-husband is on fire." "Where do we go?" "Italy," Dante said. "I have a villa in Sicily, high walls, good wine, and no extradition treaty for the specific charges they're about to invent for us." Serafina looked at the mansion, the symbol of everything she was supposed to want, and then at the black SUV. "Drive," she said. 1 year later. The heat in Sicily was different than the heat in New York. In New York, the heat radiated off asphalt and garbage, suffocating you. In Palermo, on the terrace of the Via del Mare, the heat smelled of lemons, salt, and ancient dust. It was a heat that made you feel alive. Serafina stood by the stone railing, overlooking the Tyrrhenian Sea. She was no longer the woman who wore emerald green dresses to please a husband who didn't look at her. She wore white linen trousers and a loose silk shirt, her hair cut into a sharp, chic bob that framed a face which had grown harder, yet more beautiful. She wasn't just Serafina Hart anymore. In the local whispering circles of the piazza, she was La Principessa di Ferro, the Iron Princess. "The shipment from Rotterdam is late," a voice said behind her. Serafina turned. Dante was sitting at a wrought iron table, cleaning a disassembled Beretta 92 FS. He looked different, too. The frantic energy of the New York underworld had been replaced by the quiet, terrifying confidence of a king in his castle. He was tanned, relaxed, but his eyes never stopped scanning the horizon. "Rotterdam is always late when the port inspector is new," Serafina said, walking over and pouring herself a glass of Nero d'Avola. "I sent the dossier to his wife this morning. Photos of him with his mistress in Brussels. The shipment will be released by noon." Dante paused, holding the gun barrel up to the light. He smirked. "You didn't ask my permission to blackmail a Dutch official?" "I'm the CFO of this operation, Dante. I don't ask for permission to balance the books," she replied, taking a sip of the dark wine. "Besides, you were busy dealing with the Russo remnants." "The Russos are history," Dante said, snapping the slide back onto the gun with a metallic clack. "But ghosts are harder to kill." Serafina went still. "Julian?" They hadn't spoken his name in months. The last they heard, Julian Sterling had survived the beating from Vinnie Russo, but the price was high. He had lost an eye, his reputation, and his company. Sterling Tech had collapsed under SEC investigations, triggered by the evidence Serafina leaked. Julian was rumored to be hiding in London, living off a hidden account, consumed by madness and revenge. "My contacts at Heathrow flagged a passport," Dante said quietly. "A man named Jonathan Stone. One eye. He boarded a private charter to Palermo 3 hours ago." Serafina set her glass down. Her hand didn't shake. "He's coming here. He's desperate. He has nothing left but hate. A man with nothing to lose is the most dangerous kind." Dante stood up, tucking the gun into the waistband of his pants. "I've doubled the guard. Rocco is at the gate. We're leaving for the safe house in the mountains." "No," Serafina said. Dante looked at her. "Sarah, this isn't a board meeting. This is a hit." "If we run, we look weak," she said, her voice steady. "This is our home. We built this. If he's coming, let him come. I'm done running from Julian Sterling." "He's not coming to talk, Cara." "I know," she said, opening the drawer of the patio table. She pulled out a small, pearl-handled revolver, a gift Dante had given her for her birthday. "Neither am I." The sun began to set, casting long, blood-orange shadows across the vineyard. The cicadas were screaming in the olive trees. At 8:00 p.m., the lights at the main gate went out. Dante killed the lights in the villa instantly. "They cut the power! Night vision! Stay low!" Serafina crouched behind the heavy marble island in the kitchen. She heard the suppressed thwip-thwip of bullets hitting the exterior walls. Rocco's team was engaging them at the perimeter. "How many?" she whispered. 6. "Professionals. Mercenaries," Dante said, peeking through the shutters. Julian spent his last dime on a kill squad. Suddenly, the front door exploded inward. Wood splinters rained down like confetti. 2 men in black tactical gear burst in. Dante dropped the first one with 2 shots to the chest before the man cleared the threshold. The second man fired a spray of bullets that shattered the wine rack, sending red wine flooding across the floor like blood. Dante rolled behind the sofa, firing back. The second man went down. "Clear!" Dante shouted. But he was wrong. From the shattered French doors of the terrace, a shadow stepped in. It wasn't a mercenary in gear. It was a man in a tattered, dirty suit, wearing an eye patch over his left eye. He held a large hunting knife in one hand and a detonator in the other. Julian Sterling. He looked like a wraith. His skin was grey, his teeth bared in a rictus of insanity. "Honey, I'm home," Julian rasped, his voice sounding like broken glass. Dante leveled his gun at Julian's head. "Drop it, Julian." "You shoot me, I drop this thumb," Julian giggled, waving the detonator. "And the vest I'm wearing turns this romantic villa into a crater. We all go together. A tragic love triangle." Dante froze. He couldn't take the shot. Julian's single eye locked onto Serafina, who was slowly standing up from behind the island. "Look at you," Julian sneered. "You look like a peasant. I gave you couture. I gave you the world." "You gave me a cage," Serafina said, her voice echoing in the silent room. "And you asked me to open the door. Remember?" "I made a mistake," Julian screamed, tears mixing with the sweat on his face. "But if I can't have you, no one can, especially not this animal." "Serafina, run," Dante said, his voice low and urgent. "She's not going anywhere," Julian yelled, stepping closer. The vest under his jacket beeped rhythmically. "Give me a kiss, Sarah. One last kiss for the anniversary." Serafina walked around the island. She walked toward Julian. "Sarah, stop!" Dante shouted. "It's okay, Dante," she said softly, keeping her eyes on Julian. "He just wants to be heard. He always just wanted an audience." Julian blinked, confused by her compliance. He lowered the knife slightly. "That's right. That's a good wife. Come here." Serafina stopped 2 feet from him. She could smell the stale alcohol and madness on him. "You want to win, Julian?" she asked. "I have won," he hissed. "No," Serafina said. "You haven't." She moved faster than Julian expected. She didn't go for the knife. She didn't go for the detonator. She threw the glass of red wine she had been holding in her left hand right into his good eye. Julian screamed, instinctively bringing his hands up to his face, the stinging alcohol blinding him for a split second. In that second, the detonator slipped from his thumb. Bang! The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. Julian stiffened. He looked down. A bloom of red was spreading on his white shirt, right over his heart. Serafina stood there, the pearl-handled revolver smoking in her hand. Her aim was perfect. Julian looked at her, his expression one of pure shock. He fell to his knees. The detonator lay harmlessly on the floor, unpressed. You are boring," Julian gargled, blood frothing at his lips. "I evolved," Serafina said, cold as ice. Julian Sterling fell face forward into the puddle of wine and blood, the architect of his own destruction. Dante lowered his gun. He looked at the dead man, then at Serafina. He walked over to her, gently taking the revolver from her hand. He didn't ask if she was okay. He knew she was. "Nice shot," Dante said softly. "He ruined the rug," Serafina noted, looking at the mess. Dante laughed. It was a sound of pure relief. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her hair, the smell of gunpowder and lemons surrounding them. "I love you, Mrs. Moretti," he whispered. "I love you, Dante," she replied, burying her face in his chest. "Now, about that shipment from Rotterdam." Epilogue. The investigation into the explosion at the villa, which the police report stated was a gas leak that tragically killed a disturbed intruder, was brief. The chief of police in Palermo had a new summer home, paid for by an anonymous donor. Serafina and Dante stood on the balcony of their new penthouse in Monaco. The past was buried in Sicily. The future was bright, expensive, and entirely theirs. Serafina touched her stomach. She hadn't told Dante yet, but she would tonight. The bloodline was continuing. She looked out at the yachts in the harbour. She thought about the timid girl who sat in Le Coucou, afraid to speak her mind. That girl was dead. In her place was a queen. And every queen needs a king who isn't afraid to burn the world down to keep her safe. Julian wanted an open marriage. He got one. He opened the door to hell, and Serafina walked right out of it, hand in hand with the devil himself. And she had never been happier. And that is the story of how Serafina Hart turned her husband's biggest mistake into her greatest victory. From a disregarded trophy wife to the Iron Princess of the underworld, she proved that when you push a good woman too far, you might just create a villain or a queen. Now, I have to ask you guys a question. Was Serafina right to pull the trigger, or did Julian deserve a chance at redemption? And let's be real, if your partner asked for an open marriage on your anniversary, would you have called a lawyer or would you have called a Dante? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of revenge, romance, and mafia justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story. We drop new dramas every week. Thanks for watching. And remember, be careful what you wish for. You might just get it.